Hello, everyone. My name is Debbie Wells from Artful Circle, and I am here with two really fascinating women. We've got Bonnie Stanley, who helped organize this event, and we've got Rotem Reshef, who is the artist of the hour. So I'm going to turn it all over to Bonnie because she is the expert on it.
Okay, well, I'm not really the expert. Rotem is the expert, and she's going to share with us some of her fabulous ideas and passions. And I just want to say welcome, Rotem. I mean, from Tel Aviv, it's very exciting to be able to do this kind of. I always think about the silver linings of the pandemic, and this is something we wouldn't have been really thought of doing prior. So, welcome back to Artful Circle. Some of the people here might realize that the last big event Artful Circle had prior to the shutdown was a visit to your studio in the West Village. And that was such a fabulous day. And I'm thrilled that we can come back and this time not just look at what was at the studio, but look and visit your new studio where you're on air from, and also look at the various installations that you've done over the years. So before we start up with views of the artwork, I just wanted to take a moment to have you all get to know Rotem a bit. Rotem was born in Israel in 1964. She is the fourth generation of a rather prominent Israeli family. They were pioneers. Her great-grandfather was Moshe Smolansky, who was part of the first Aliyah in 1890. Smolansky was an agriculturalist who believed in working the land, which I think must have had an impact on Rotem, as we'll get to know her work. He also was a writer and political advocate, supporting the creation of an Arab-Israeli or Arab-Jewish state. He was a strong character and instilled a sense of family. Also, we will see that through Rotem's work. And from an early age, Rotem, I think, not only was influenced by his legacy, but also just in her life. And I know I love this story, Rotem, of how you talk about how you developed as a very young girl to being an artist. And I thought maybe you could share a little bit with everyone today about that.
I would love to. I'm not sure which of the stories exactly you're
I love how you talk about when you were a little girl and you would put on exhibits for your family.
That's so true. And as a little girl, we didn't go to. In my family, we were very educated, but we didn't go to museums. We had art books at home, but we didn't have any original artwork besides mine. But I was a very creative girl, and I was born in Rehovot, which is something like a half an hour drive out of Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a kibbutz, it wasn't a moshav, it wasn't an agricultural but it wasn't also a city. It was something in between. And there were a lot of orange orchards outside. And I would spend hours walking outside and just collecting things. And I would do these exhibitions in my room. So I would pick up a door or pick up a fisherman's rope in the beach, and I would hang it in my room, and I would call it an exhibition. And I don't think I've even been in any exhibitions before doing it, but it was just a need I had. So
right. And something that clearly must have been not only coming from inside of you, but your parents must have encouraged, because you then went on to go to art school.
Yes, I was the artist in the family. So definitely.
So you went to art school and had some considerable success there, but then something happened where you stopped painting for a while.
Yes, in this art school, it's called Hamidrasha, Bet Berl. It was there were two major art schools in Israel at the time, Betzalel, which I think most of the people who are familiar with Israeli art heard about, and Hamidrasha, which was the second best, or not the second best, the Tel Aviv-based art school. And and I got my America Israel Cultural Foundation scholarship from them. I got recognition. I was I showed in the Ramat Gan Museum of Art, which just opened.
Wow.
But then in the final exhibition, I had an incident, let's say, with, let's say, the top, one of the leading artists, Israeli artist, who was a very important figure in a midrasha, and he was really mean and horrible to me. And he was, I don't know, he was just, yeah, he was talking for, I don't know for how long. I mean, it had nothing to do with the art I was doing, which could be better or not as good. It doesn't really matter. It's you're a student, you're just graduating, and the idea is, of course, not to put you down. And I left this event and not painting for 15 years. So that was a very traumatic event in my life.
Yes.
But then after 15 years, I got married, I raised 4 children, and I was living with my family in the Netherlands. And burglars went into my parents' house, and what they stole was only 2 of my paintings that were on the wall.
Wow. Isn't that incredible that here your parents' house was burglarized and the only thing taken was your artwork? I mean, that really, and we know that had an equally impactful impact on you because that changed everything for you, right?
Yes. I am a very good daughter, and my parents were devastating by losing the only art the art left from the time I was painting, and I just started to paint again in order to bring them new paintings. And the first visit the next visit I came to Israel, I got out of the plane with 2 paintings that until now they're on the wall.
Wow, that's fabulous.
Yeah, and that was it was 2003. So many years passed since then, but it was, it's like the second birth of me into the art world. And there are a lot of things that has to do with going back to painting after not painting for a while. A lot of fears of something that might get lost, that something, will disappear. But I'm proving myself wrong every single day. So
you certainly are. You certainly are. And your passion for your family and for the earth and the world around you is so evident in your artwork. And I think that actually is a wonderful transition to talking about and actually looking at some of the pieces that you've been doing. So why don't we, Debbie, I think it's time, let's roll the cameras and start looking at some of the artwork.
Well, now, as you know, with our other Artful Circle events, we are going to shrink us. So now you'll see the 3 of us underneath, and now you hopefully you can all see the presentation.
Yes. So we're starting here. This isn't Rotem's first installation, but it is the first time I met Rotem. She had an exhibition at the Katarina Museum of Art in the fall of 2019, and her installation was called Arcadia. It filled the Spotlight Gallery, where it complemented the concurrent exhibit at the museum, which was Sparkling Amazons, which focused on the female artists in the famous 9th Street show from 1951. So, Rotem, this exhibition was made of 2 scrolls, and maybe by way of starting to talk about your work, can you tell us about the inspiration behind each of them?
So let me talk a little bit about painting on scrolls of canvases, because I think it's somewhat unique. So what you see here is me standing between one of the scrolls. Each scroll is, this one is 27 yards long, and the other scroll was something like 10 yards long. I'm painting on the floor, so you can see the canvas before me, and this is the way I'm painting. I'm stretching the canvases on the floor, and I organize different things on the canvas. I pour diluted acrylic paint on them. I let it sit, I let it sink. And then once it's dry, I peel off what was on the canvas. And what is left is ghost images of what I was painting. So these 2 scrolls were made with plants. The scroll we see here was made, I think I made it for about a year with plants I picked up in New York. I call it the
blue scroll, right? The one on the wall.
Exactly. I call it the blue scroll, even though when I open it, I never get to see the whole scroll until I come to an exhibition because, it's so long. I paint it section by section. But so in my memory, this scroll was blue. So this is how it got the name, the blue scroll. And it was all made with different plants I picked up in New York, organized them again section by section on the canvas in my studio, repeated this procedure of organizing it, pouring the paint, let it dry, peel up the plants, and then get and use a new nature scenery which I created, which was kind of my vision.
Right. And Debbie, let's look at from another angle. I think we have one or two more slides of Arcadia.
You want me to keep going?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So you can see here even better just how large these are. Tell me, so the blue scroll was from pieces that you picked up in Manhattan. They were things that you found in the street, but you said they were still organic, correct?
All organic, and actually, it was much harder to pick up plants in New York. I mean, I'm when I do it in Israel, it's much easier because people trim trees here, and I can go with a car and just have piles of trimmed trees that sometimes stands for 3 days, and it's really easy. But in New York, people are very efficient. So you're not allowed to leave any trimmed trees outside. So I need to be, it's much harder. It's not really recommended to pick up things in Central Park or different parks. So it's much harder. But, I go to the flower market. I go to, I pick up what I can.
Exactly. And then when you were in Katona, it got a little easier because it's still New York, but in the suburbs, in the garden behind the museum. Tell us about what you found there for the green.
Oh my God. Yeah. The nature around the Katona Museum is unbelievable. It's, it was mind blowing. So for me, it was, which I think made the people in the museum, I mean, they were very excited to see how excited I was from picking up all the plants I could from the grounds of the museum, behind the museum. I would come with big plastic bags on the train, pick up all the plants I could, and then take it with me back to New York.
When you were picking the plants, were you looking at it for visual interest, or did you understand the horticulture of it? What was your motivation for picking what you picked?
Usually it's not the agriculture. It's, sometimes the idea is to really represent something. So I have some scrolls which the interest is to show, a specific kind of plant. I mean, we will talk about it later, maybe, that is growing somewhere. But over here, I just wanted to show, to kind of bring the nature in. And in the gallery, in the museum, it was important to me to have the two kinds of nature, one standing in front of the other. One had this blue and ochre in different colors, and then the other one was very green, because I was sure that it's going to be green because it was so green and beautiful outside in Katona, so it had to get the green. And what was also interesting was that the smell, the scent from the canvases was different, because I'm using the plants and some of them stick with the paint to the canvas. When you stand close to the canvas, you can literally smell the canvas, and it was different in each one. And you can see how you can smell the forest in the green one, but it wasn't that kind of smell in the other one. It was drier. It was different.
Right. Well, I can tell you that as a docent and docent trainer at Katona Museum, and spending so much time there, especially during this exhibit, we all loved this installation. It felt like an added piece of home. It was very personal and very moving. And I think in general, abstract expressionist art, I mean, that's what it's about, right? It's about tapping into the viewer's emotions and the artist expressing their emotions. And that truly, truly happened in the fact that it was from so much of the horticulture around the museum just was that much more moving and special. So,
excuse me, Rotem, somebody just asked you to repeat what kind of paint you used for this.
So in all my installations and all my paintings, I'm using acrylic, water-based acrylic paint, which is diluted. So if you look behind me, you can see bottles of paint, and it's I'm just adding water to the acrylic paint, and so it's liquid. And you know, talking about the liquid paint has, you know, I can keep on talking about it because using the liquid paint changed everything for me in the painting, because there is something about the use of liquid, which, you know, I call it like the general name would be control and release. How much can I control the paint and how much do I let it go? And in all the techniques I'm developing and all the series I'm painting, this liquid paint is kind of running through them and leading me to explore and find new things I can do without being able to control exactly what I'm doing or what the paint is doing.
Rotem, this is wonderful, but you're getting ahead of yourself. I wanted, because we're going to talk more about control.
Okay,
because
sure.
It's so important. We have a final slide of Arcadia, and then I'd like to move on. I believe that we have a picture, because some people can see this, that you're in your studio, which is fantastic. And I think we also have a slide of your studio coming up.
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to point out also when we saw the exhibit at Katona, it was really wonderful that you felt like you were encompassed in the room. You created an environment, which is exactly what you did, but you really did evoke that feeling, which really made it very special.
Yes. So if you can't see clearly behind Rotem, you can see here a little better. She talked about all of the paint bottles that she has and these huge walls that she has in her very new studio. She actually just moved her studio in Tel Aviv. And I think it would be really interesting for people to hear what that experience was like. I mean, that's a huge undertaking. What was it like to rediscover some of your old artwork?
Yeah, so I moved in January. I had to move after 6 years in a studio in the building nearby. I had to move to this stunning new double-size studio. And while moving, you know, after 6 years, you don't comprehend how much stuff, how much paintings, how much drawings, how much I don't know, paint, how many things I had that I need to move. I didn't even take a moving company. I took I don't know, different friends of my kids who came to help me, and we ended up at 7 p.m. and we were exhausted and we couldn't believe that we did it, because there was so many things. But while doing it, it was really exciting to discover some of the paintings which I didn't see for a while, and I had to reorganize everything in the new studio, which is also exciting. I mean, you kind of reorganize your life. I have, every time I move to a new studio or reshape it, I get longer workspace on the. So you can see behind me, I have, you see the long scroll. Now it's 10 meters, which is something like 10 yards of canvas, which I can spread all at once and paint it as one painting. Now, I never painted, you know, I painted section by section. In my New York studio, I have two areas, 2 rooms, and I can open something like 4 yards, I think, in each one, it's nice. I'm not complaining. But over here, it's just, it's really exciting. I have a lot of workspace on the sides. I have another area where I can sit and work, and it's just, it feels like home. So that was the feeling I was aiming to. aiming for. So
well, that's fabulous. And we can see that there's canvas. You've talked about how you lay the canvas on the floor, and we see it here. Debbie, let's go to the next slide, because Rotem has talked to me a bit about the influence that Helen Frankenthaler has had on her. And I thought our guests would be interested. I mean, they certainly know, most of our guests know Helen Frankenthaler as one of the most significant color field artists ever. She had invented the soak stain technique, where she poured pigments like Rotem does that had been diluted onto unprimed and unstretched canvases. And I just thought it would be interesting, because we have this iconic photo of Helen, that maybe Rotem could just talk a little bit about her influence.
Yeah, I mean, I want to start by saying that when I was studying art, of course, we didn't have Google, but we learned from books, black and white books. I mean, there is so much I can say that I was inspired, but it didn't happen kind of all the way back at the time. I think it's a combination of something that is coming out for me and something that is meeting what I adore and love and excited about the most, which is these very large scale paintings or scrolls of paintings over here, a lot of colors, a lot of, there is something over here also about the freedom that in this case, Helen Frankenthaler took to herself to just let the paint, be spread, be stained on the canvas. And she created, just like what I do, and I try to do, these surroundings and these mirrors of emotions and thoughts. I mean, you don't read it by understanding each, or maybe you do, maybe Bonnie you do, but by understanding each line. I mean, there is something of the whole of the painting which just asks you to dive in, and this is something I'm always excited about. So. And this picture specifically, photo specifically, because she's surrounded with the painting, so there is something very moving for me in this photo.
Yeah. I'm with you. And no, I don't look at the specific line or the specific anything when I look at this type of art. It is an emotional reaction. And what I love about your installations is that they're immersive. Just as Helen Frankenthaler is surrounded, so do we become surrounded in your installations. And so why don't we, Debbie, let's move on to the next slide, and let's now work chronologically. Well, this is an up-close shot of one of Rotem's pieces, so we can see some of the detail here. And we'll look at the detail in some of her individual paintings at the end, but let's move on to the next slide, where we start to talk about control release, which is actually not only your process, but the name that you gave to this first installation. So how did this come about, Rotem?
Well, let's divide. First, let me give the credit to the name Control Release to Sagir Rafael, who is a curator, and he's on the event as well. And he came up with this name and I'm using it since, because I think it really describes what I do. The exhibition itself was, the canvases you see here were not planned to become an exhibition as is. I was painting, I always loved to paint on large scale. And at the beginning, I would take this scroll of canvas and I would paint it section by section, thinking that at some point somebody will come and say, oh, I want this section, I want that section, and I will just, cut it to sections and stretch it, and it will become a separate painting. But as I wasn't doing it, and I kept on rolling the canvas, it became, when I knew that I was invited to show in this gallery in Tel Aviv, I understood that I have a lot of canvas, a lot of painted canvas, and I decided that I don't want to do this regular exhibition with just stretched canvases, stretched paintings. I wanted to do something that will be an immersive exhibition to take over the whole gallery from the floor to the ceiling to the walls, and people will be able to walk in the paintings. And this is what we did. It was the first time, so we had to figure out what now seems, basic to me was then just we had to discover how you put all the canvases together, how you connect them to the wall. Everything was a mystery. Everything was a puzzle we had to figure out how to do.
Right. Let's look at the installation from another view, Debbie. Yeah, this is fabulous. I mean, they're just so beautiful. And you see, they take up the whole room. Do we have one more slide of this as well?
I think so.
Yeah, really spectacular.
How much time and thought do you put into how you're presenting it on the walls? Because you have them so artfully laid and hung, and it looks like you put a lot of thought and effort into exactly where the placement is.
It's part of the process of, it's painting is one thing, deciding how to exhibit it is another thing. But then on the other hand, there is always, like in the painting, there is a lot of freedom in what I do. Also eventually in hanging them on the wall, I always keep it open in a way, because when you come, the canvases, after I paint on them, they're not completely straight anymore. Every play, the paint makes the canvas stretch in some places. So it's not that I get these, organized, fixed canvases that I need to put. There is something about the freedom of the hanging, which is also important. So I need to, I know what I want to do, how I want to hang it on the wall, but I always have to keep it open. And I also like to hang it while keeping some of the canvas still rolled. So I always like to keep secrets.
From a curatorial standpoint, I'm just curious, do you supervise the installation, or do you give instructions, or are you intuitive as you're putting it together? How do you usually do it?
Well, in general, I'm obsessed about how it's going to behave. So I'm always in the gallery from morning to night until it's on. I never leave anything open. I don't trust anyone when it comes to how it's supposed to be hanged. I need to be there.
Yeah. You're in control. You're not releasing.
Well, it's interesting. Oftentimes, especially with abstract art, artists are asked, how do you know when a painting is finished? And I think for Rotem, it's not just how do you know when it's finished, but how do you know how it's going to look hung? And you're so involved. I mean, I've seen you on video, which we'll all see in a little while. And I've seen you in person, and you were involved from the very beginning to choosing your colors and the extent to which you dilute them, to the length of time your materials lay on the canvas, to how they're hung and installed. And, it evolves. And I think as we look at more of your installations, we'll see how your process evolves. And I think before we look at more installations, there are two more artists. You're so incredibly gracious that you sort of give nods to these other artists. So maybe we should do that before we do a deeper dive into your work. I think in the next slide, Debbie, if we don't have one more of control and release.
Okay, I do want to ask one question. Jacqueline Covey asked the question that since you're doing it on these large scrolls, does anybody ever say to you, I only like this section, can you cut it out? Do you do that, or how does that work if somebody only likes a piece of it or wants to buy a piece of it?
I like to say that I don't cut it anymore. If, let's say that in my studio, I had someone, she came to my studio and it was the beginning of the canvas, and the canvas was already cut to start with. It was the first section I painted after I cut the green part for the Arcadia exhibition. And she said she wanted it. So this is kind of, an exception. But in general, once something was already became kind of a body of work, and it became a finalized work for an exhibition, I think I would keep it. I mean, I don't. No, I wouldn't. No, I think the large scrolls are kind of museum, institutional kind of works.
Right.
I mean,
But
I do have
Yes.
smaller scrolls that might be that somebody could put at home. It could be like a big piece, but it could find a home. But I think the larger ones.
Well, at the end of this webinar, you'll see images of all different size artwork that you do. So we'll see all of that as we go along. Okay, so let's continue.
Yes.
This is your inspiration.
Giving a nod now to Sam Gilliam. Everyone may or may not be familiar, so just to let everyone know, Gilliam was an African-American color-filled and lyrical abstract expressionist artist who influenced other artists like Rotem through his method of taking the canvas and turning it into an object in space and an object that creates space. Tell us what appealed to you about hanging the canvas this way, because I think there's actually a lot of similarities between the way this is installed and, for certain, control and release, which we just looked at.
Yeah, so much. I think one of the things that is really exciting for me is taking the two-dimensional painting and turning it into a three-dimensional surrounding or environment. And I think what Sam Gilliam is doing is exactly that. I mean, he's not painting it, like this, but eventually you have to walk around it and you see it as a three-dimensional object, art object. And I think there is something about the shift you do as a viewer, and for me as an artist, standing in front of a flat canvas and then see it as something which is three-dimensional and takes up space which is more than a wall. I think, it's inspiring, it's exciting, it's something I always wanted to do. So,
and you're doing it beautifully. Before we look at the next installation, I think we have a slide of one other artist, Katarina Gross. And Katarina Gross, I think, if I remember correctly from our conversations, Rotem, that this idea of immersion, and we've talked a little bit about it today, but this idea of immersion becomes more and more significant as you've evolved as an artist. And by looking at this piece of Katarina Gross's, we can understand that there are these outside influences that come into your work. Tell us a little bit about your relationship, or your, not necessarily personal relationship, but artistic relationship with her.
I think first, the fact that she's a woman, artist that takes size is not an issue for her. The opposite. I think she's interested, just as I am, in painting in sizes which historically would be considered more belongs to men artists, not. So I think there is something about the courage of taking a very large. Usually she's working on canvas, sometimes on, I don't know how to say it in English. She's anyways taking something which is beyond the body. I mean, something which you have to dive into and just make it a surrounding. Not that many artists are doing it, and so I'm always, and she's always creative. She's always creating something new. It's always very colorful. She's always taking the shape out of the plain material. She creates new shapes out of it. So it always opens your mind to see or to walk in or next to, and you can walk on these on many of the installations she does. You can literally walk on them. So that's okay. That's something you don't do every day.
No.
Well, it's wonderful when you create a world and then you invite people to not just look at it, but to be a part of it.
Yeah. And I love also, Rotem, how you acknowledge and are so aware of how the women's empowerment aspect of this, that working on a large scale, not being afraid of that, not being afraid of the powerful color. Certainly here and in your works, we see this vibrancy and this energy in the colors that you choose. And I think that's certainly a wonderful message to be sending out to the world and to women and the rest of the world as well. So you ready to start looking at more? We have phantoms here. throwback to 2016. So on your website, you said, and I know you don't always remember the things you write on your website, but you did say that with Phantom Stream, you said that one can't enter the same river twice, but can flow with it for a while. And so I was hoping you could share with us, how does the word flow have relevance to this work in particular, or in your work in general?
Yeah, it's a major word, because I think when I started to work with the diluted acrylic paint, flow was, I'm trying to think if it was, I think it was the first series I was, when I started to name my series of paintings, I think flow was the first one. There was something about the use of the diluted acrylic paint, the way it ran on the canvas, the flows, and I try to lead its way, but then, I let it lead it. It's kind of a collaboration between me and the paint and the color. So I think flow is kind of, if you look at these, at this image, you can see on the left-hand side, you can see two scrolls coming out from the ceiling, and they were all made with this very flowing kind of way of the paint. And when you look on the other canvases, they were made in a method they called imprints. So in that one, I imprint, in this case, plastics, but I imprint things on the canvas, and in a way, I stop the paint from flowing and kind of stop it in some way. Also, not with complete control, but in some way. But right. The flowing is a major thing when I'm using these liquid paint.
Jacqueline asks, she says, I love how the center one is installed on this piece, and on the one on the right, how do you get the whitish, straightish lines? And she asks, is the canvas folded as you apply the paint?
The canvas, no. Okay. The canvas is stretched on the floor. I always work on the floor. I stretch it with staples, and I use over here. I was using plastics. So it was, I think, for 2 years I was using different kinds of plastics, putting the paint on the canvas and putting plastics on top. The same way I was doing with plants in Arcadia. And there was something very mysterious and magical for me using these humble, simple materials as plastics, different kinds. It could be from, a supermarket bag to a very big polyethylene that my canvases would come covered with. And I put it, and then the first one, I think the first time I was using the plastics, it took me something like 2 months for the paint to dry underneath. Wow. Which is crazy because I have to work and I can't wait for 2 months for the paint to dry. But eventually, I talked with my materials, and I had to explain to them that we need to move on.
Right.
But so the lines are coming actually from the folds of the plastic. So in this case, I would put the plastics and I would create these kind of different folds on the plastic, and then this is where the air comes in, and this is where the paint wouldn't be. So, right. So again, going back to the control and release, there is a some amount of how much do I control the folds, and so I know what I get, I know what I do, and I can predict, to some extent what I'm going to get, but it's always surprising me, usually right. For the best.
Rotem, I'm curious, does it take longer for the paint to dry when you use plastics, or is it the same amount of time when you're using the organic material?
What do you think?
I would think the organic material absorbs the paint so that it dries quicker, but I could be so wrong. That's why I'm asking you.
No, you're correct, but I don't think it's only because it absorbs, I guess also, but also because it has the air is coming, you think about, branches, you have the air coming, and when they put, a big plastic sheet on on the canvas, the air wouldn't come in, and there is no way for the paint to dry. So,
Do you ever teach workshops to teach other people how to do this, or is it all top secret?
Actually, it's not top secret, because as you see, I'm telling people. I have a lot of groups, a lot of people coming to my studio, and I always happy to share. I have a lot of open studio events, but I guess it's to some extent. But I can see how people are coming. When they come to my studio, they go out and say, "Oh, I want to go home and I want to paint." I mean, there is something about the excitement. Of the process of me telling how excited, I'm so excited about the process that I think it's going beyond me, and people take it, and they take what they, and it can be little kids, it can be nurses that are coming to my studio, and then they would see veins in what they see, and then so you see also how different people are inspired and see different things in the art.
Yeah.
Which it's fascinating, and it's also it's another part of being excited by.
Well, it's part of how you give back. It's really, really spectacular. So this is another part of Phantom Stream. You can see these two together. They just look so. They look like a couple. I see a couple there. It's really great how they are in conversation with one another. Debbie, let's move to we can see another. So here you get this sense of all of the different dimensions and the space that this Phantom Stream took up. And do we have one more before, or do we?
We're moving
to Time Traveler. So we're now in 2017, and Time Traveler was created with 6 scrolls of paintings that were interwoven. We can see both horizontally and vertically. And why don't you tell us a little bit about, we've been talking a lot about techniques, and I'd love for you to continue, Rotem, on that line, but also tell us a little bit about the representation here, because I think there's some meaning, if I'm not mistaken.
Of course. Time Traveler I was invited to show Time Traveler at the University of Laverne. They have 2 gallery spaces. One of them is called Tall Wall Space. And as you can see, it's a very tall wall. And I was asked to do an installation specifically for that gallery. And I wanted to deal, the thing that interests me, they're coming from all different directions, but in this case, I was kind of taking the idea of the 4 seasons. So these 6 scrolls are representing the seasons. You have the yellow ones are the summer, the blue ones are the winter, and then you have spring and fall. And the fact that they were interwoven one into the other created this saying about global warming, about the seasons that are shifting, about a world now that is, it's kind of misbehaving. I mean, we're not. Things are not the ice is melting. Now I'm going to forget. Okay, the winds are blowing. The planet is in danger, and I think that was the first work I was doing that was really reflecting on a global scale on what is happening in the world. And I try to, it's always, there is a text, and when you read the text, you understand more meanings of what I wanted to say. And then there is the painting, which is just a very, very intense painting. A lot of, I was excited about how marble-like it looked when you look at it, and although it was made only by plastics, there was in each season, when I was painting it, I would use the same material. So I would use the same plastics. I was doing the seasons one by one according to the order of the seasons, and I would use the plastics, the same ones. So like the imprints that were on one plastic and move to the next one summer would go into fall, that would go into winter. There was continuity between between the seasons in the way I was painting and also in the way it was eventually
installed
on the wall. Yeah.
So interesting. So you're using the same format. The thing that's really changing is color. And you can see the impact of it. I mean, we talk all the time about how color impacts us so tremendously. And you're using that here as your major shift between the seasons.
Yes. I mean, I was using in each season, I used something that represented the seasons, but you cannot see it. I mean, it's, I would use like straw for the summer in addition to the plastics and threads I was using. But this is something that, it's like putting, I don't know, something behind, underneath,
Right.
You can't really tell. I mean,
Right.
only when you look closely. But it's definitely, the color is definitely a major component of what I do.
Yeah. And Rotem, was this the first time, and I'm actually not sure if you think of yourself this way now, but I tend to think of you as an artist activist, someone who's using her art to express a passion and a social concern, and with the desire to not only express that, but to wake us all up and create an awareness of something that we all really should be very concerned about.
Well, thank you. It's a really good question, because for many years I wanted to keep it out. I wanted to keep what is happening in the world, kind of all the evil, bad things, out of the studio. I felt that art and my art are kind of a guarded, secure something I'm doing, and I thought that I'm bringing. I wanted to bring kind of the beauty I thought that my art can bring, and then on the other hand, I was always very active in political and social issues on different levels, different ways. And then at some point, I just couldn't, separate it. I just said, I'm one person and I can't do this. I don't have two brains. I need to find ways to add to my art, the thing that I'm involved in my other life, kind of.
Right.
And I think time travel was the first time that it really showed. It kind of became stronger and stronger. I mean, we're going to see more installations. The more we go, the deeper I went into these installations, the more recognizable I think it is.
I agree. We'll see the evolution as we move on. I mean, let's see. Is there this next? Chris, before we go though, actually, Chris asked, well, you can see a bit of the scale. Chris asked, what's the scale of the pieces in Time Traveler? And this is my personal favorite slide because we can get a sense of the scale of this piece. But do you have any idea, Rotem, like what the dimensions are?
Yeah, I will try to translate meters to yards. So it's 8 yards tall and 15 yards wide.
Wow.
So it was 14 meters wide. Yeah, it was a big space, and while it was on the wall, I had a curator that will lead us to the next, the next installation. A curator from another gallery that was in Los Angeles, and another curator from another gallery in California came to see the show, and she asked if I'm willing to move the exhibition to her gallery. She also had about the same size of wall, and then she had additional. The gallery was much larger, and I was happy and excited to do that. And I was asking her to let me put it in a different configuration, because the canvases, because they're coming in this scroll as scrolls, they can be whatever I want them to be. And I think that it's amazing to take something and then to be able to create something new with it. And she was very gracious, and she said yes, of course. So we created a different exhibition. We called it Time Traveler Part 2 Campus. And the meaning shifted, although we used the same scroll, the meaning shifted with If we move to the next
Yeah,
slide.
let's go to the next slide. And
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is the first one. Also, this is Time Traveler. So the next one will probably be part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just for the. We'll see it in a larger scale. That was just for the scale, and the other one was exhibited in California Lutheran University. Yeah. And it was when there was a big crisis with the refugees at the time. And again, I couldn't stay aside and not say anything. So I created this, if we move to the next one, I guess we'll see it.
Go to the next one.
Big cross that was in front of a big X and had these two, the blue ones came on the side. And to me, it looked like a compass. And I was asking people that came to the gallery to look for the compass within themselves, because the feeling was that there is nobody who's really leading the world to a good place, and people will have to look for the right thing to do within themselves. And that was kind of a call for action, or a call for thought, or a call for feeling, or just shaking people. You know what? It's, we have to do something. So it's always we have to do something. It's the question is what.
Right.
Rotem, do you allow people to walk on the canvases that are on the floor, or they have to keep their distance?
No, I rather not.
Yeah.
When they're in the studio, I have a feeling that, I don't let people walk on it, but I walk on it. I mean, it's kind of they have to be kind of, they're not delicate. I mean, they have to, me and the canvases, we work hard. I mean, there is something very, I'm on top of it and I'm painting with all my body, and the canvases are part of this process. But, when it comes to the exhibition, I rather not. I mean, I did see some kids running on it, but.
Well, both you and the canvases are strong and resilient. That is fabulous. And I love this shot as well. But maybe I'm wondering, we will be talking more about your environmentalism and your connection with our planet. But the other thing that is really so important to you, and one of the things I relate to, I feel like we have a very strong bond, is our connection to our families. And clearly, you came back into painting because of this connection as a good daughter to your parents. And that connection, is for your whole life. And you now, at this point in 2019, you're doing installations, and you made a decision to do this Mom, Dad, and Me installation. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about this and the Habitat series. And I believe we're going to be looking at a video as well. So perhaps you can talk a little, and then after Debbie can roll the video, and we'll actually see you during the installation process.
So this exhibition started a year before. I went to a funeral of good friends of ours, and we're standing there, and it was, it was a beautiful funeral, and they were talking very nicely about the parents of our friends. And I stand there and I said, what I do in my art is always keep memory. I keep the memory of the paint. I keep the memory of the materials. I kind of dealing with memory all the time. And I decided that I don't want to wait until my parents are 120. I want to keep the memory while they can still enjoy. And then for a year, I was accompanied the life. I went to their house. I went to a garden, which is on my grandmother's, that was named on after my grandma, and my father is the one who's taking care of it and developing it. And I took plants from, we will see a little bit more, but I took plants from different places. I imprinted my parents' figures, and I kind of created this world where my parents and my family are kind of the center of it. And so maybe we should see the video, and then we will talk more about it.
That sounds great.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's the next slide or not, but
right?
Great. Okay, good. Rotem, that's just so spectacular to see. And what was that like for you? What is it like for you to watch that whole process unfold as if it was happening once again?
It's exciting. It's exciting. It was a very special exhibition because it took me out of the route of dealing with this world issues and going really back into my family. While I was doing it, I discovered, of course, like I do while working on every exhibition, I discovered new things. So this, in this slide, for instance, we can see it was the first time I was imprinting soft plants. It was my parents' balconies plants. They have a lot of pots with plants, and usually I use trees, like branches, and the leaves are different. And over here it was, plants that I picked up. I went to my parents in the morning, we trimmed some plants, and then I went straight to my studio and I imprinted them because the following day, they were already, you couldn't use them. So, and then, of course, it was, I don't think I put this photo, but of course, the day my parents came to see the exhibition for the first time, that was, it was really amazing because, it was really, really exciting.
They really saw a piece of themselves in it.
Yes, they have. I mean, there was, you could see, I was using their clothes, for instance, to create their figures.
Let's
they
go
look like,
to the next slide, because I believe you can see, here's another installation piece, but I think the next, we could just move forward. Yeah, here. You can see the clothing, right?
Yeah, this is the three of us, actually. This is a new series I started while working on the exhibition. The series is called Habitat, and in Habitat, I'm talking about, about where we live, but about us. And it's usually me, but over here, it's on the right-hand side, it's me, and then my father, and then my mother. And it's the three of us, and everybody wants to know if I'm an only child. I'm not. I have an older brother and a younger sister. But for this exhibition, it was only about me and my parents. And it was the first time, I'm an abstract painter. So usually I don't do figuration of any sort. But in this exhibition, I was looking beside the scrolls I was painting. I wanted to have three stretch canvases with ourselves. And I chose, so I was asking my mom to find me clothes of herself and my father, and it had to be something that they, not something new from the shelf, but something that they wore before. And I chose also my own, my clothes that that was already been worn before, and I put it together with the plants, and that was. I learned something about me and about my family through the painting, because there was something that you cannot separate the figure from the nature. Now, I wasn't born, I live in Tel Aviv for over 30 years. I wasn't born in an agricultural place, but there was something about this connection that struck me, and I was thinking backwards, and then I thought, going back to Moshe Smilansky, my great grandfather, he had these orange orchards. And then my grandma worked in an agricultural institution. And then my father was the head of the botanical and zoological gardens in Tel Aviv. And my mother just has a green thumb. So anything, you just give her this tiny piece of plant and it will become this unbelievable, huge, So, and then me, which I cannot grow anything, but I can grow paintings. So, so this is the way I connect to nature. And this is another painting from this series, because this series was, I developed it and it became one of my favorite series. And there is something about the figure that is, in the nature. It's not clear if it's lying in nature, if it's flying above it, how it is exactly, how it's connected, but it's not a question. I mean, it's clear that the connections there are binds that are not are there to stay.
Well, part of being an environmentalist, part of being a climate activist is recognizing and getting all of us to recognize that we are part of nature. We can't separate ourselves out, and we have to take care of the world the same way we hopefully are taking care of ourselves. And that actually leads us, I'm just concerned because I know we're out of time, it leads us to your next installation, which is, it was a big leap to include the live plants in your installation of Mom, Dad, and Me. And then you take this other giant leap with Unraveling Earth. And I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about this exhibit that occurred just last fall, and actually may still be around. I think it closes in March. Is that right?
It opened for only one weekend because of it's in Israel, but because of all the lockdowns and shutdowns, it's still on, and there was only one official weekend. It was open since September that we installed it, so that's crazy. Hopefully it's going to open again in the coming in this week or next. And in Unraveling Earth, it's part of a group exhibition which is called Art Has a Scent, and it's talking about it was initiated by a professor to I don't know how do you call it, a nose, throat, and
a botanist. No,
I don't know, why do I go to this corner? Anyway, someone who is a doctor, and he's an artist, and he was really curious about what kind of art is dealing with scent, and he initiated this exhibition. In this exhibition, I wanted to bring different aspects of scent into my installation, and I chose to do it outdoors in a shipping container. The shipping container is actually, I put it in the corner just next to a field where it's an agricultural farm where kids come to grow vegetables and different things, learn about agriculture. It's a beautiful, beautiful space. And my container is actually kind of flowing out of this field.
Let's look at it from the inside, Debbie.
So this is the outside. I put kind of the plants are coming in four ways. There is it's printed on the canvas, on the material in the front. It's weather resistant in the front. I have the plants on the back. I brought 8 trucks of soil, planted all of them. I have a spice garden in the front, so each one brings a different kind of smell. I planted the trees, and inside I have this painting installation of, again, 20 yards of painting that was made with plants that grow. When we talked at the beginning, if it's important which plants, so over here I chose plants that grow in this farm. So the plants are on the wall. In the previous slide, I think we had this over here. So the plants are imprinted on the canvases inside, and then the floor is covered with the plants as if they fell out of the canvases.
How spectacular!
It is actually, and it's all in every area of the installation has a different kind of scent, smell. So
that's great. Debbie, let's see if is there another. I think we have another slide of the inside.
No, we're up to the next installation.
Okay, so I mean, so just with a word, they can talk about how how temporary is a life here. I mean, plants and shipping container, you would think about something that you can take it from one place to the other that is very temporary, but then when it's in the ocean, it can stay there for, I don't know, tens or hundreds of years, and it wouldn't sink, and it wouldn't, nothing would happen to it. So, it's asking a lot of questions about us as human beings on the planet and about Israelis on this land. It's it's made in Israel. So
right. So then, most recently, we have a Heartfelt Event, and this is a multimedia installation, from what I understand, and was inspired by some of the protests that were going on in Israel. How is this different than some of the work that you've done before? Because you do continue to evolve and add in different elements.
It relates, on one hand, it goes deeper into the heart. It's called the Heartfelt Event, and it's talking about our emotions and feelings as human beings to ourselves, but also to where we live. And it was specifically done in Israel. It was shown in the last fall, and it was accompanied by a soundtrack I recorded in the protest outside the Prime Minister residence, which is very active. It's happening for 32 weeks in a row, and it's very lively. And I felt that I need to talk about where our heart is. Again, it's like if we go back to Time Traveler and where we stand in front of the world, it was asking people to, to find their own heart in this installation. So it had three parts. One was the green part, which was kind of a walk in the woods. It had the sound of birds singing, heartbeat, and a walk in the woods. And then the dark one, the dark scroll, had, we took these drums from Balfour, from the protest, and we made them very slow, and it was kind of, I don't know, more sound like a tribal kind of sound. And then on the other room, which was blue and white, it was kind of the veins. It was very, again, a lot of, the inside, each part was created kind of a room that you would go in, and it was very, very strongly and very powerful drums that you would feel the blood flowing, and they all connected. I mean, the sound went from one area to the other. You couldn't really put them aside. It was a major part of the installation. It was because it took you from. I mean, the canvases were large. The corridors were very narrow. So you were asking me about walking on the canvas. Over here, you couldn't walk on the canvas, but you had to touch the canvas. When you moved them in, we checked exactly what the minimum size you need in order to, to have something to allow people to walk. And then we chose the narrow way, and people had to kind of squeeze between the canvases and find the way in the heart. I mean, it was kind of the blue and red and the dark one created kind of a heart shape structure, and then it was all standing in the green, in nature, which for me is what was here before us and what will probably be here after us. So it was a very emotional installation, and then this part was the first time I was using kind of tubes. Which there is a very long corridor leading to the exhibition, and that was kind of, it shows the blue and red, and the blood was kind of flashing into the heart that was inside, and
right.
And yes. So
well, you know what, Rotem, you and Israel are going through very similar crises and of conscience, and that we are in our country in the United States, and I think we can all relate to that, those conflicting feelings, and how we need to sort of squeeze ourselves into places and into feelings and being in touch with dichotomies and other people, and bridging the gaps between us all, and how we come together. And your art, that installation, just speaks to all of that. it was really, really spectacular. We're sort of running out of time, and I don't want to give short shrift to the works that you have available in New York. We have several slides, and I know many people throughout this discussion have expressed interest in your works, that are more available. So we have here 2 pieces from that Habitat series that is based on your family and nature. And next we have these pieces, which I believe you told me were based on the Arcadia installation. Is that correct?
Yeah, I made 14 pieces. They're smaller pieces that were, the original idea was to put them as a print on the iconic Katona windows, the Katona Museum windows. And then eventually, because of the winter, because we thought it might crack the windows, we ended up not using them for the windows, but I did paint 7 diamond shape and 7 rectangular pieces, which are small and beautiful, and they reflect they were all made with the nature from New York, from Katona. Each one is different, and it's almost mix and match. So one of them was actually sold in the previous in the Katona had this auction in September.
Yes.
Or October. So one of them was sold there, but still there are so many, and I thought that it will be, it's kind of choosing the 2 that can work together. But
right. Okay. And what else what we have lots of goodies to show. I love this piece. I love the flow and the color combination here. Fossil.
Thank you. Yeah, so this one was painted actually in Tel Aviv. I have a lot of paintings in my studio in New York, in the village. I do have more paintings in Tel Aviv because I spend more time here, especially this year. So sometimes I bring pieces with me, and this one is called Fossil because there was something about using the very, very small tiny pieces of plants that created, I felt it's like fossilized on the canvas. So it's a series of imprints in which paintings are just looks like fossils to me.
That's great. And what else do we have, Debbie?
Okay. Sorry.
Meadow, which I think it talks somewhat in the language of the green scroll in the Katona, the Arcadia exhibition in the Katona Museum.
Yeah. And next, fossil again, a different fossil.
Exactly.
Do you often work in series?
No, I don't, not officially, but practically it happened that I'm interested in something specific and I investigate it. So it ended up being a series, and then it strikes me, and then I move on. So.
Right. One thing leads to another, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
This one's beautiful. I like this one.
Absolutely gorgeous. And I love how you named it. It does. I wish we had, when we do our gallery series, we have artist comparisons. It would be nice to have Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night next to that.
Yeah.
See the similar movement.
And these are very Helen Frankenthaler inspired.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. And what else?
Yeah.
Okay. So here, Rotem just included her CV, her resume, just to get a sense of her many, many accomplishments. And I believe after this, she also included, which you're free to watch later, because everybody here will get a recording. This is an interview she did with Sandy Klein that is really just a pleasure to listen to, talking about herself as a creative woman, a lot of her process that she shared with us today. And I think there might be one more. There's some additional links because Rotem has an incredible website with many more videos. If you enjoyed the video of Mom, Dad, and Me, there are many more videos to see. And of course, ways to get in touch with Rotem. Hopefully she will be back in New York soon and we can visit in person. Rotem,
I'm planning to be in New York, March and April. I'm having a residency at Residency Unlimited in Brooklyn, and I'll be around. So
that's fabulous. Before we end, there was one question we didn't get to. Someone had asked, Vanita had asked, when the process, when you started as an artist, I mean, we've seen since you've been more active that you have evolved so tremendously, and one thing builds upon another. Was your work prior as a young woman, as a student, was it vastly different from what you're doing now, or do you see the precursors of what you started doing then?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I was asking myself the same question for a while. I think the main, I used very saturated colors even before, and I was abstract, but I had some touches of figurative in it. But I think the main difference is the use of the diluted paint. So the flow that we talked about is the major difference. I mean, and then it took me to all this route of finding how to take this liquid and turn it into a stain that I'm happy with, let's say. So yeah, there are some similarities. I mean, you can't really find I have, but you can't really find. I don't share them of photos of. Maybe someday of what I used to do when I was in art school, or. But yeah, I mean, you can see the path, but it's definitely changed a lot.
Right. Well, I think with everything else, the more we live our lives and experience different things, the more we, we always are the same person, but we bring more to the table with each day and each moment that we experience, learn and live more and have different relationships and get to know ourselves better. And certainly one of the things that I love about you and I love about your work is how you share yourself. And you really open yourself up to the world and allow us to be a part of your experience and all that you have to share. And I thank you so much for coming to Artful Circle today and sharing with all of us. And until we meet again.
And thank you for being so gracious and also so articulate about how you do things and how you put it together. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time with you. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Debbie.